really discouraged. They get really disengaged because they just don't like math or it's not exciting. A lot of times it's just pen and paper work. We also noticed that a lot of students lack self-confidence in their own math skills. Personally, I was in a placement and I remember being in this grade 3 classroom and some of the kids were in tears because they didn't think they could do math and they weren't confident in their skills. So especially when the teacher was assigning homework, they got really anxious about it because they felt like they couldn't do it on their own. We also noticed that there's so many learning levels in classes that it's really hard to address everybody with one activity. So for example, in my last placement I was in, it was a split class, it was a 3-4, so there's 2 levels right there that you have to accommodate. But then on top of that, there was grade 4s that were doing grade 2 math, and there were some grade 3s that were even above the grade 4, so it was really hard to get a range of everyone. So because of these problems that we saw, we were exploring a technology and a program that would really help with these issues in the classroom. So we came up with a program called Prodigy. So to just introduce it a little bit, we have a really short video that kind of just explains what Prodigy is. The woman that will be talking in the video, her name's Karen, and she's a grade 3 teacher, so she explains how she uses it in her classroom as well.
Imagine Hi, I'm Karen. I'm a 3rd grade teacher, and I want to tell you the story about how my class fell in love with math. Imagine your favorite video game as a kid. Now imagine that game with the math curriculum built into it. That's Prodigy. My class loved it. Prodigy made learning math fun, something that I struggled to do for a long time. It was really easy to get started using my teacher class code. I had my students log on to prodigygame.com, they entered my code, and within 2 minutes they began their new math journey. My students went through a tutorial, a diagnostic test, and answered hundreds of curriculum-aligned questions. They were hooked, and frankly I was hooked too. The math problems were fantastic, and I was a huge fan of the virtual manipulatives. After school, I checked out the real-time reports, and I was able to see all of the skills my students covered today, broken down by topic. I could see who needed extra help, and it made it so much easier to plan tomorrow's lesson. I also took my first stab at Prodigy's assignments and set up my own summative assessment right in the game. By the end of that first Prodigy class, I knew I had found an awesome engagement tool. But by the end of the week, I realized I'd found an assessment, feedback, and differentiation tool, all built into one game. In my first week using Prodigy, I had saved about 2 hours in prep and marking time alone. On top of that, Prodigy is completely free. I love to teach, but it makes it so much easier knowing that my students love to learn.
So she gave a little introduction of what Prodigy is and how she uses it in her classroom, but she didn't really get down to the details. So basically, we put together a little how you play slide that is really from the kids' perspective. So it's what they would be doing when they're playing this game. So basically, every teacher, you sign up with a teacher account, and you can add students to your account, and it gives you like a class list. That way, you can track how your students are doing, how often they're playing, and things like that. But from the kids' perspective, every class will have a class code. So they go to prodigygame.com, and they type in the class code, and it will link them to all the activities their teacher has kind of assigned for them in this game. Then what they're going to do is create an avatar. So you can see a picture of one up there. They can personalize it so it looks like them. They can do whatever they want with it, which is nice because it gets them more involved and more invested. And then basically what the game is, it's kind of like a Pokemon Go kind of game where you battle different creatures, you can capture creatures, and yeah, you just have different battles. So this picture kind of shows what they're doing here. So there's a little avatar on this side and the creature they're trying to catch here. So you can do different spells, they call them, or different actions in order to capture that creature. But basically, every move that you do in a battle requires you to answer a math question. So this is an example down here. This will be a higher level question. As students progress, they need tougher opponents and they have to learn more complex spells. So basically that just means that when they start out, it's going to be easier questions, more for beginners, and then as they grow, they're going to be developing their math skills more and more as they go as well. They also have math manipulatives, like virtual manipulatives that you can use. So they have like the 10 base 10 blocks there, and you can write on the screen in order to solve your answer. So it allows the kids to show all their work, and then the teacher can see that as well. So Prodigy assists both teachers and students, which is really nice because it's not just one or the other. So some of the uses for teachers, they're able to monitor and track class use, both at home and at school, which is really cool. So a lot of the times, you don't know what your kids are doing at home, if they're doing their math homework, if they're practicing with their parents. But this allows you to see how much time they're playing the game. So in class, you can see face-to-face, but you can also log onto your teacher account and see how much each student is playing. And then it gives you a separate little bar for how long they've been playing at home. So it shows you how much they're practicing away from school as well. It also gives you the ability to create specific assignments that align with the desired unit, which is really nice because obviously the key to all of this is balance. So this isn't what you're going to want to be doing for all your math classes all year. But it's a nice substitute every once in a while, which is really nice because it has an outline of all the grades and then all the strands within the grades and activities and questions that you can implement into the game that matches up with that. So for example, if I was teaching my grade 2s for geometry, I can go into that section and be sure that when they're playing the game, those questions that they have to ask during battles are going to be grade 2 geometry associated. You can also create assessments for learning to see where the students are academically. So Karen in the video talked a little bit about that when she was talking about her diagnostic assessments. So basically, the first time the kids log on, they're going to go through a series of questions, still in the game format, that's going to level them within the game. So the teacher can go back in and change that. So if they get like a lower level in the game, but maybe the teacher knows that they really just weren't paying attention or they weren't feeling well, they can go reassign a grade as well. But it levels them within that grade, which is nice, and then they build off of that. Teachers are also able to place students at various levels of the game, which is a really great differentiation tool. So like I was saying before, in my placement when I had a grade 3, like grade 3s and grade 4s all at various levels, the teacher is able to put the grade 3s in a grade 3 level, but then there's a spectrum which they can fall on, which is really nice as well. Uses for the student is really important. Obviously, we want to be teaching student-centered learning. And so this makes math content a lot more exciting because it's game-based and challenge-based. So it's not just, giving out a worksheet of all these multiplication questions that they have to complete in half an hour because that looks really intimidating. Whereas with this, they just feel like they're playing a game and they have to answer a few math questions here and there. But really they're answering more than they think they are. Like I mentioned before, it can be played at school or at home. So a lot of the times, like I was saying before, with one of my grade 3s, they had a lot of anxiety about bringing home math homework because they didn't feel like they could do it. So with this, they can play it at school and get the help at school, but it's not intimidating to bring home either because it seems like a game, and you're not feeling like you're being punished if you can't get an answer right. You just try again, and it's not intimidating. Another nice thing is that the levels are discrete. So I could have one of my grade 4s who are working at a really high level and a grade 3 who's working at a very low level right beside each other, and they would never be able to know that I've placed them at different levels because the game is really discrete. So everybody's game is going to look a little bit different, so it's really hard to tell who's at what level. And it's a low pressure, low anxiety delivery of math. So I remember when I was in school, when we were doing like multiplication tables, we had to play this game around the world where everyone would stand up and you had to answer a math question in like 10 seconds, and then you would move on to the next person. And it was really anxiety provoking and really intimidating and not fun. It made me hate math. So with this, it's really low anxiety because it is personal. You're doing your own thing in the game, but you can interact with other people as well, which is really nice, but it's not a lot of pressure. So now Megan is going to show you a little bit about how to get started with the game if you are wanting to do this in your own classroom, and she's going to take you through a little bit of a demonstration.
Yeah, so I'm going to be showing you from the teacher's perspective. So you just click on get a free account, and you click teacher, and parents can also have access to this as well to see their students learning. And so full name,
And then make a password.
and it's that simple. So now you'll just answer a few simple questions. So what type of curriculum you want, and you'll click on Ontario Math Curriculum, and then your class name, and then you can select your class grade as well. So let's do grade 2. And then here you can talk about, or you can select what you want to focus on, but you can also skip this step for later if you want to use other things. So then you can have your name of a school. So you can find all of the school boards within here. So I'm just going to pick my old elementary school. And you're ready to go. Your class is all ready. So you can have print instructions for your students to add Prodigy, but this is more for the older grades. But for the younger grades, you can actually add students manually. Oh. Here we go. So currently I don't have any students in my classroom, so I'll hit add. So you can either use your class code or you can do it manually. So here you can just have your first name, so last name, and then create student accounts. So here you can see I have one student account right now, and you can add parents to it. So you can edit it. So here's the grade override, which is a really important tool. So you can select what grade the student will be focusing on. So even though I'm in a grade 2 class, if they're not working at grade 2 or they're working above grade 2, you can select grade 1 or grade 3. So when I was in my placement, we actually used this, and I was in a grade 5-6 split, and one of my 5s was actually working at a grade 2 level. So I was able to include her within these games without anyone actually knowing. And then they can create their own password as well. And so you can add students, and you can also get letters for the parents, which is downloaded. And see, it says what we're doing, how we're using it, and your student's name and password. And also, so this is one of my favorite tools, is the planning tools. So through Prodigy, you can actually create assignments and deadlines. So here we go to create assignment, and then you can select the skill that you want your students to be focusing on. So we will select missing number addition 1 from 20. And then you choose what students you want to be participating in. So you can select all students or some. So this is another great way for differentiated instruction. And then your number of questions as well. So it can have up to 25 questions per assignment. And then you hit next, and then you can choose your date. So it could start on the 24th and then end on the 27th. And then create. And there you have an assignment, which can be completed in class or at home. And one of the wonderful things about Prodigy is you can view student usage. So this tells you exactly what students did at home and at school. So it shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the days of the week. And then also you can show your weekly activities. Well, no one answered any questions this week because we just created it. But it'll also show all the correct answers and all of the answers that need to be worked upon. And then student progress. So there's no reports, but here it will show exactly what the student has done and what questions that they have
So in the video, Karen was talking about how it saved her a lot of time with marking, and that's because this does it for you. So you can see what questions the students answered correctly, what they need more work on. It would make it really nice for parent-teacher interviews as well, because you can print out these charts and show the parents exactly where your information is coming from, and they can actually access it from their computer as well, which is really nice.
And another thing to add on to that is the curriculum report, which tells you exactly what you have covered in the curriculum. So if you ever have your principal come to you and say like, oh, have you been covering this? You can say, yes, we've been doing this through Prodigy. And there's also topic coverage as well to show exactly what topics you have covered. And so that's basically it for the student side, or for the teacher perspective of it.
Yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
Can you play with Prodigy like on any kind of device, like computer, iPad, tablet, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, so it's an app that you can download. If your class has a set of iPads, you can put it on the iPads. I have it on my phone right now from just playing around with it. But like you saw up here, you can access it from computers as well. So really whatever technology your classroom has, or if they have a computer lab they need to go to, it's pretty accessible.
Yeah. It's also a great activity for your students to use if they finish work early. You can just go grab an iPad if they're accessible in your classroom, and then keep practicing math.
Yeah. So now what we're going to do is take you through, you can log on to it yourselves and just have a look from the student point of view. So we'll stop the video camera